Number 10, Purple Guy. So one of the unexplained parts of FNAF is something that I feel like we have been trying to justify for years, but that also might just be as simple as a game design explanation. This one, I guess, is sort of explained, but it's never been explicitly confirmed by Scott Cawthon, I don't believe. So because I feel like it's interesting and we don't know for sure, I figured I'd include it here. In the mini games, William Afton appears as a purple guy. This became so synonymous with the character that one of his aliases even became Purple Guy. But why does he appear to be purple? Some claim this is because William Afton is an undead figure. He died, he rotted, turning purple, much like Michael did in Sister Location. He also looks purple in that game as well, in the mini games. If we even want to call those mini games, I don't know, the mini walking about. And so, because William Afton's corpse is all decomposed, that's how he appears. But what about in FNAF 3? We also see a mini game where he seems to be alive as we watch as he gets into the springtrap suit, running from what we assume are the ghosts of his victims. Once in the suit, it's evident that the spring locks have malfunctioned, puncturing his body and killing him. So if he doesn't die till after, how could he be purple before? Why would he appear purple before his death in these games? Well, some have theorized it's to make the character stand out. A Redditor by the username of Stray Dogs actually suggested that it is actually because of the style of old Atari 2600 games. William Afton is actually a shadowy figure. Those old games usually only had a black backdrop. So for anything that was supposed to be shadowy, you would use purple or something to avoid it blending into the background. I think that's actually a pretty good explanation. So I know I said unexplained, but that one might be explained because I just think it makes sense. But let me know what you think. Is it rotting, or is it old game styles, or do you still feel like we don't have an answer for it yet? And friends, before we move on to the next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up. If you love FNAF videos, make sure you show us you love them so we can make more content for you. Number 9, the Night 5 phone call. It's possible that the creepy phone call we get on Night 5 of FNAF 1 is just there to creep us out. And if that is its only meaning or purpose, I would say it does its job pretty well. But of course, that is never enough for us FNAF fans. We need it to mean something. Why does it happen? And why only on Night 5? Is there a hidden message somewhere in there? Well, many fans have broken down this recording. Lots of theories claim that it's saying something different than other theories. It doesn't seem we've universally been able to agree on the words being said or the meaning behind them, if there really was any meaning at all. We still don't have a confirmed answer for this creepy call, where it came from, or what it's trying to tell us. Is it a demonic message? Are the children trying to reach out? Or is it just there to scare FNAF 1 players? And it really does mean nothing. Number 8, Ballora's Song. Something that continues to haunt me is Ballora's Song. Many fans believe that Ballora is a stand-in for William Afton's deceased or simply ex-wife, who left him in some kind of permanent capacity, whether through death or just by choice. Ballora's song that she sings seems to play into this theory very well. Ballora sings about wanting someone to come join her, someone who is secluded, seemingly in mourning, and who has no joy left in their life. The idea here is that Ballora is echoing the feelings of Afton's wife, who felt that William was lost to her because of his work, and possibly because of an accident that caused them to lose a child, also adding distance between them. Ballora sings, "All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. It's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away." If Ballora was built to represent William's wife, who left him after the loss of a child, then these lyrics seem to make a lot of sense. However, we still have no real idea if Ballora is meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or if William was ever married at all. I'm still contemplating whether or not his children really are his biological children and not kids that he adopted, created, or potentially kidnapped. What do you think? Is Ballora meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or is she just another of William's twisted creations, meant to just creep us out? Number 7, Crying Child? Children? One thing we still aren't sure of is who exactly the crying child is. What's more, we have a few different crying children that pop up throughout the series. Usually when we talk about the crying child, we're talking about the character who appears in FNAF 4. But for the purpose of this point, what I'm actually curious about is your theories on the crying child or children who appear in the games previous to number 4. You can see hints of them in the games prior, but you'll definitely have spotted them in FNAF 3. There they show up prominently in mini games, including in the Happiest Day Freddy minigame where the crying child there must be given cake. Who are these crying children hinted at in previous games? Are all these appearances a cry back to the crying child? Or are they all different children who just happen to all be miserable? Are they all victims? I have so many questions about everything. I'm like, this probably, but also we still don't know, so what's going on? Number 6, the end of Sister Location. One of the endings for Sister Location, not the true ending, but still, shows us that despite us managing to survive the night and escape Ennard, if that's the ending you get, avoiding getting scooped, even when we make it safely home to watch our soaps, we're not truly safe. Instead, we are pursued by Ennard, who somehow manages to escape the facility without us, even though that was the whole point of needing to scoop us in the first place, was to be able to escape. And also, miraculously, either finds a way to follow us home or find out somehow where we live. I guess they could have our address on file at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but still, how did they get out? What? Number 5, it's me. It's me is a phrase that pops up all over the place in FNAF 1 and is classified as being a hallucination. But what does it mean and where does it come from? There are a wide variety of theories on this subject, but many of them differ. One thing that many have in common is they believe the words "it's me" are coming from the animatronics, but whether the phrase is intended to be malicious, reassuring, or simply is some kind of plea for help from the spirits that haunt those animatronics remains to be decided on. What's more, these are just theories about the phrase. We still don't really have any definitive proof that tells us exactly what "it's me" is meant to refer to and why it shows up all over the place in FNAF 1, from Foxy's sign here and there to background posters to simply appearing on your screen in accompaniment with either Freddy or Bonnie. That is, of course, if you get that glitch, because it doesn't always show up, but it can. Number 4, Crying Child. While many still believe the Crying Child is the protagonist of FNAF 4, we don't really know much about them, or if they truly are the protagonist we're meant to be playing as in that game. The Crying Child is often thought to be the third child of William Afton, but none of their appearances have ever explained who exactly they are, so we are still left even wondering if this is true. I also feel like we don't even really know for sure if they're the third child in terms of like the order of the siblings. I don't know. You can let me know if you feel like we have lots of evidence to prove something like that, but I don't feel like we have enough evidence even for that yet. Most of what we know about them is based on theories we've all come up with to make sense of their importance and their existence. Why they have been so prominently featured as a character still remains to be seen. Are they actually in Afton? Is this some kind of red herring meant to mislead us? Could they somehow be Michael Afton at a younger age? Or could they somehow have some kind of tie there? Or perhaps William Afton, but younger? I don't think that makes sense with dates, but the dates that appear in the game really only make the mystery more confusing, as it's very hard for us to pinpoint a timeline in regards to the potential siblings' dates of birth and death, or just the dates of anything in general. It's very confusing. I'm confused. Are you confused? Number 3, Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy. Why do Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy crash your game? This is a mystery that still seems unexplained. I guess we could just easily explain it away with the fact that antagonists in the game each simply have their own thing that they do, their own way of punishing you, and this is Shadow Bonnie's and Golden Freddy's way of doing so. If you are not proactive enough, that is. Still, it seems very meta in comparison to some of the other punishments, as this punishment isn't something that happens to the character you're playing as in-game, like losing power, being unable to access your screens, doors getting stuck open or closed, and things like that. But instead, it's something that happens outside of the in-game environment, affecting you as a player, not you as a character in-game. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean anything? Number 2, getting scooped. A strange moment in terms of what we see happen in-game versus what would really happen in real life can be experienced in Sister Location. In this game, at the end of your true story, your character, Eggs Benedict, who we believe to be Michael Afton, gets scooped. Ennard then wears your skin as a human disguise, allowing them to leave the Circus Baby and Entertainment rental facility. Afterwards, the protagonist rejects the insides of Ennard after outwardly rotting. Being that they have no guts and should be dead, this would, in theory, be the end of their story, because now they literally have nothing inside them. They just upchucked it. They would crumble to the ground and finally be 100% dead. I mean, technically getting scooped should also make you 100% dead, but in either case, That's not what happens. Instead, you hear Circus Baby's voice reassuring you that you won't die, and we see good ol' Eggs Benny come back to life. How is this possible? We still have no idea. Though I would, once again, like to use this opportunity to assert my Afton's children are lifelike humanoid animatronics theory. Anyone? Anyone taking that theory? I think it's a pretty good theory. Number 1, the murders. One of the greatest mysteries is also one of the most important ones, especially when it comes to understanding the most prominent character in the franchise, William Afton. The murders that he committed still baffle players. We also don't even really know if he committed all of the murders. Recently, there has been some doubt based on evidence found in the Fazbear Frights books as to whether or not he could actually have maybe an accomplice, possibly Vanny, and even more ridiculously, I don't know, possibly a time-traveling Vanny? I don't know. Why William Afton seeks to kill is still a huge unexplained question in the game, and one that is crazy important, because it would also help to explain ideally so many other things that William has done. The murderous events that have been referred to in the lore, and the why behind them remains one of the most puzzling and most important mysteries that FNAF has given us. Number 10, Fan of the Fan. The fan has been a key prop in the FNAF series. A trusty fan usually exists in most of the offices that we've attempted to survive in throughout these games. But what if even the fan was horrifying? That's right, I want to see even our trusty fan become something that can jump scare us to death. I want to see the fan transformed into an animatronic. I know it sounds weird, but what if there was an animatronic always in the office with you that you also had to monitor, lest it would sneak up on you and spook you? I think it could be really wonderfully weird and delightfully upsetting in the best of ways. After all, if we all got an allusion to the Scott Cawthon created sentient coffee pot, and there can be a whole game about a little candle, what's to stop us from making the fan a character in the FNAF franchise? I'm just saying. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about some of our favorite things that haven't come up yet in the games, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Death by Gumdrop. I have always found the story from Fazbear Frights, known as Gumdrop Angel, deeply disturbing. This one comes from the book of the same name and features a story where spoiled children consume candy before turning into it themselves. They then generally make their way back to the restaurant where they themselves are boxed up and served to other children for their birthday as a birthday treat. It's pretty scary stuff. Never mind getting jump scared, I want to see this option for our deaths pop up in the video game world of FNAF. Much more frightening, I think, to slowly become a paralyzed but sentient human-shaped gumdrop that is then torn to pieces and consumed by others as they smile, laugh, and rejoice at your unknowing demise. Like, wow, that's really dark. Where is that in the games? Number 8, Bunny Call. Bunny Call is the name of a Fazbear Frights story and book. It is the 5th book in the Fazbear Frights series and also features the story that I want to talk about, the titled story there, Bunny Call. In this story, we join our protagonist, Bob, who is headed to Camp Atenia with his family. However, he didn't want to go, and because of that signs them up as payback for an early morning wake-up call from Ralpho the Bunny, the camp's mascot. Later, Bob regrets his decision and attempts to prevent Ralpho from entering the cabin the morning of the call. He succeeds, despite the fact that the bunny mascot is super persistent and tries to get into the cabin pretty much every which way. Bob later learns that this person was not actually Ralpho, as the staff member who does the morning bunny calls never came around and overslept. I've always wanted a Fazbear summer camp experience, and it would be really cool to have something like the bunny call happen in said potential future game. Who else is down for the Freddy Fazbear's Family Fun summer camp experience? Anyone? Anyone? Just me? Number 7, Time Traveling Spring Bonnie. In Into the Pit from the first Fazbear Frights book of the same name, we learn of a time-traveling ball pit that protagonist Oswald disappears through, taking him back to what appears to be an old Freddy's of the past. At one point, he seems to experience what it was like when those murders happened, the chaos surrounding them that day when all those young ones went missing. He even runs into the person responsible, who we assume to be William Afton in a Spring Bonnie suit. Spring Bonnie also attempts to follow Oswald back to his present day and seemingly succeeds, kind of taking the place of his father. I think it would be horrifying to incorporate some of these elements into the villain themselves and the games. I mean, what's scarier than William Afton that doesn't die? How about immortal William Afton who can also time travel? I swear, if that ball pit in Security Breach does not allow us to time travel, I'm gonna be so disappointed. I'm gonna be like elated on one hand because I'm gonna be like, yay, time travel could complicate things. I'm also gonna be so sad because I'm expecting the time travel now. Number 6, Andrew fights back. While William Afton has been a major character the whole way through when it comes to the FNAF game franchise, we still have yet to meet another seemingly important character from the books. A character we believe is named Andrew. Andrew is believed to be the vengeful, childlike spirit that haunts William's severely burnt self in the Fazbear Fright story The Man in Room 1280, which comes from the book Bunny Call, the 5th in the series. Here we learn that the spirit is the one keeping William alive despite being so badly injured. The spirit refuses to let William die because he wants William to suffer as he has suffered. It is believed that this child, Andrew, was an early victim of Afton's. He also is affiliated with an alligator mask that could be a symbol of Montgomery Gator. Andrew goes on to become one of the spirits that possesses the Stitch Wraith and often is angry and vengeful. Considering Montgomery Gator is in Security Breach and maybe who this mask refers to, it's hopeful that we could see someone like Andrew show up in the games at some point, helping to also prevent William from resurrecting back into the physical world. Which would be a really cool team up, I'm not gonna lie. Number 5, Cooked Alive. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but here we are. One of the scariest moments for me from the Fazbear Frights books is from the story What We Found. In this story from the 8th Fazbear Frights book, Gumdrop Angel, we learn the story of a man named Hudson, who becomes a security guard at the Fazbear Frights location. He ends up tormented by the ghosts and Springtrap, all while seemingly hallucinating from the bad ventilation in this place. In the end, he gets cooked alive in one of the ovens in the kitchen, trapped there with it somehow being turned on. While many of the FNAF games take place in restaurants or involve them in some way, we've never seen or experienced anything quite as gruesome as this in the games. We've seen animatronics being burned alive, but never people, and I think this is a deeply disturbing level of horror that the games could use. I mean, kitchens are scary after all. They have all kinds of things that could hurt you, so it's weird that we've never really explored them more in this world, especially as a lot of the places, we've been in have had kitchens. It looks like we'll be spending at least some time in the kitchen in Security Breach, so I guess we'll have to see if such gruesome fates await us or our enemies there. Number 4, Charlie's robotic origins. A cool thing for us to learn in the games that originally comes from the books. In the Silver Eyes trilogy, we learned that Charlie, or Charlotte, Henry's daughter, was never really human. Well, she was originally human, I guess, but it was a really long time ago. She was kidnapped and killed by William Afton when she was very young, believing for years that it was actually her twin brother, Sammy, who had died. In reality, it was not her twin brother, but herself. Filled with grief, her father, Henry, lost his mind as he made 4 humanoid yet robotic versions of Charlie to represent the different stages of her life. Eventually, one of these robots dies, and we learn the truth about Charlie's origins in that final book, The Fourth Closet. It would be cool to see a robotic version of Charlie resurface in the games, and learn that she had lived on in some way after her death as a robot that Henry had made. Number 3, Lucky Boy's influence. Another story that has haunted me ever since I first came upon the Fazbear Frights books is Sergio's Lucky Day from the 8th book in the series Gumdrop Angel. Truly, Gumdrop Angel still has some of the most horrifying stories ever thus far when it comes to these books. And Sergio's Lucky Day is definitely one of them. In this story, Sergio finds Lucky Boy, who is very similar in appearance to Balloon Boy, but if you combine it with something like the toy known as a Magic 8 Ball. Anyone else remember Magic 8 Balls? Are those still a thing? I think those are still a thing. You used to shake them, and then you would ask them a question and they would tell you the answer to it. They would tell you what you should be doing. Lucky Boy helps guide Sergio, making his wishes and his dreams come true, seemingly, and bringing him luck, but eventually also twisting his sense of free will and ultimately leaving Sergio in a worse condition by the end of the story, even influencing Sergio into disfiguring himself in an attempt to impress and get a date with his old high school crush as he attends his high school reunion. I really hope we get to experience the influence moments of Lucky Boy in Security Breach, or possibly a future FNAF game. We've already met Balloon Boy and the female version of that character, JJ, but it would be really cool if there was like a whole series of just different types of creepy statues or toys like this, like, you know, Balloon Boy, Lucky Boy, Good Boy, Laughing Boy. I like the idea of something that sounds really nice but is actually terrible. Like, all of them could be cursed in their own way. Number 2, Stitch Wraith. The Stitch Wraith is a character I think we've all been hoping comes to the FNAF games continuity. A fan favorite from the books, the Stitch Wraith is a character that appears in each epilogue of each Fazbear Frights book, and the mystery of which has been unraveled throughout the series of these books. It would be cool to see them adapted to the games and see what side that they would be on, the side of good or the side of evil. I imagine the Stitch Wraith as a creepy ally who freaks you out, but also aids you in your fight to stop William Afton. Maybe as long as you stay out of their way. The Stitch Wraith is a character I'd love to be jump scared by, but I would also love to see take on Afton themselves. Number 1, Master Plan Reveal. Something I have been waiting a long time for, it feels like. I think something we've all been waiting for, really, is the great reveal of exactly why William Afton did all this. Was it all orchestrated? Why does he kill? Was it all a mad science experiment? Are these acts committed in fits of passion? Is it a compulsive urge to kill that drives him? We still don't know any of this. Something I would love to see in Security Breach, or at least at some point in the near-ish future, is a grand speech delivered by William that explains pretty much everything. His motivation, why he did what he did, I mean, you know, even what inspired him to get into the world of family restaurants, pizza, arcades, and animatronics. Perhaps we could get a whole game that reveals some more of his backstory and motivation besides, but I'd honestly just be content at this point with some evil monologue explaining his master plan. Just please, help us understand. Give us some kind of explanation.
And 10, the discovery of Remnant. The discovery of Remnant is only really described to us in the original novel series, with William learning about the souls of the missing children being basically infused into the endoskeletons of the original 5 animatronics. He melts them down to make the fun times, but this is when his goal changes. Originally, he, from what we can tell with our limited information, was just killing for the sake of it. However, now he had a purpose. He wanted to find the key to eternal life, to immortality, whether it be to bring maybe an extra child back, or to keep himself in the land of the living. The moment William discovered Remnant, he totally changed his game plan. However, that's the importance to the FNAF story. To us, it could be when we discovered how Remnant was made in the Fazbear Frights books, when Dr. Phineas Taggart discovered that agony was the most powerful human emotion, and that the act of possessing something in the FNAF world was just your extreme agony latching onto a nearby object, which explains why it happened to the children, and then to William, which I'll talk about later on. And a 9, missing children's incident. The missing children's incident is really what started the FNAF series. It's also a tongue twister. It's a mystery that we all gravitated towards when we started looking into the first game, and it's the incident that really popularized the series, aside from it being terrifying. The incident has gone down in history as one of the scariest and most convoluted things in recent years, with whole threads being dedicated to why or how it happened, along with how William got away with it, since the suits were literally leaking body fluids like a rotting corpse would, and no one checked them out. It's incredible how far the series has come from just that one moment, and it being the catalyst for everything else. That makes it pretty important and very deserving of our number 9 spot. And before we get any further, if you're enjoying this video or just like the FNAF content in general, be sure you're hitting that like button on this one and all the videos to come. It really helps us out and it lets us know what you want to see more of. And at 8, scooping. The first scooping of the series was that of Elizabeth Afton, the Afton family daughter. The one that was probably going to make a lot of mistakes in high school and college, but at least she wouldn't have been as bad as her father. But then she went and ignored him, resulting in her getting scooped by Baby and getting crushed, thus possessing the animatronic, which is freaking terrifying to begin with, but I think that Scott was trying to teach his kids to listen to him, honestly. This event, while not the start of William's killing spree, is a pivotal moment in the series as well, because while he discovered the Remnant already, now he had a personal stake in the matter. His kid had possessed an animatronic. And the key to life in this Remnant was also the key to keeping his daughter alive, and making sure that she could live forever, even if he used her to kill Henry in FNAF World, but that's beside the point. Her scooping is also what we believe made Crying Child scared of the animatronics and the inspiration behind the Nightmare animatronics' stomach mouths, which ended up coming into play during the Crying Child's death later in the timeline. Probably the same week, if we're being honest. Also, the FNAF series is like 3 or 4 years younger than Skyrim. That's it. And at 7, Scooping 2, Electric Boogaloo. Michael's scooping, however, defined the next parts of the series as a whole. We learn that he's working to right his father's wrongs, and we think that he's been doing it the whole time, even though it could have been Henry. Check the link in the iCard for the theory on that. But Michael's scooping was different. Instead of him dying, we see him get filled with Ennard and then used as a skin suit to walk around in the world. We see his skin rot or bruise as it turns purple, drawing enough attention that Ennard thinks it's a better idea to roam the sewers as a mess of animatronic parts. But then he lets us know that he's coming after his father, so much so that once he traps him in Pizzeria Simulator, he stays there to make sure the deed is done, but it's not. And Michael gave his life in order for his father's reign of terror to end, but is this the last time we've seen Michael, or is always coming back hereditary? Only time will tell. Maybe reincarnation is a thing in the FNAF series. It very well could be. Scott's just pulling things out at this point. And at 6, Springlocked. In FNAF 3, we watch as William Afton tries to save his own skin. He knows the animatronics are alive and tries to save himself by dismantling them in an effort to make sure they won't be able to, you know, stuff him into a furry suit. But in this action, as we see in the 8-bit minigames, he ends up releasing the souls of the characters. Well, I guess technically they aren't released, they just appear in an astral form or something, since they'd still be possessing the suits because he needs to melt them down. But yeah. This scares William because, you know, 5 of his murder victims are staring him down like Chica in a hot slice of pizza, so he does the one thing that he could think of, try and scare them back, by getting into the Spring Bonnie suit he used to lure them away in the first place. This suit makes him feel powerful, it's a confidence booster, it makes him feel like he's in control. A weird way to express a dom kink, but okay, I'm not judging. However, he does this so fast and the room was so moist and wet that instead of scaring them, he gets himself snapped. The spring locks fail and the suit shoots plenty of tiny and large bits of endoskeleton metal into his body, causing him to collapse and convulse, oozing blood like the kids in their suits. But this causes so much hassle because now, 30 years later, when he is set free, he can still kill. He isn't the frail old man that he should be. He has the strength of the animatronic behind him, and he's gonna use it. Halfway through number 5, Bite of 83. The Bite of 83, not to be confused with the Bite of 87, is one of the most confusing moments in a timeline sense. Like, we know it happened in 1983, but what happened to the crying child after? Does William indeed put him back together? Does he possess something? What happened to Crying Child? But this is an important moment too, because despite the confusion between 1987 and 1983, this would only drive William deeper into his madness, causing him to do unspeakable and unexpected things, like turn his son into a robot and give him false memories of killing his younger sibling so he wouldn't go back to a Freddy's location, naming the new robot version Michael, for instance. Or by just going on even more of a killing spree, not caring about the consequences of his actions because what else does he have to lose? And if Crying Child does end up possessing the security logbook or even Golden Freddy, then that only goes to serve this point too. The Bite of 83 is a horrific but important moment. And at 4, Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame from FNAF 3 was planned to be the end of the series. Scott said that the game was meant to be the last, but people were disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare, so he made FNAF 4, which makes sense now since it's pretty much an overcorrection. That's why those animatronics are so damn terrifying and horrific, and why FNAF 4 is listed as the end of the original FNAF story. The souls at the time of FNAF 3's release are in fact set free, hence the good and bad endings, but come FNAF 4 and more so Sister Location, we learn that this isn't the case, since the remnant metal used to make the fun times is actually made of the remnant from the original 5 kids, which causes some interesting plot holes but could help explain a lot. Like, the children's spirits could have been released, but the metal was still infused with their agony perhaps, allowing it to be more conductive for spirits, hence why Elizabeth possesses babies so quickly, or something along those lines, maybe? I don't know. The horrific implications of the original ending to the series make this one of the most important FNAF lore moments, especially if it had ended there. Imagine if it had. Imagine how simple the games would have been if it just ended in FNAF 3. And that was the ending. We set the spirits free and that was it. We were good. Didn't work. Getting close to the end in number 3, FNAF 6. FNAF 6 is another one of those ending sequences, where the series looks like it could have ended, and while slightly more convoluted, it would have been okay. We would have hammered out the rest eventually. The FNAF 6 ending, though, was indeed the end of multiple animatronics. Elizabeth, Charlotte, and Ennard were all released in the FNAF fire, as well as Michael, who stays to burn, and Henry, who stayed so nobody would remember this place or this story. However, we know one escaped. Springtrap, or Scrap Trap, William Afton himself, managing to evade death once again, and it wouldn't be until later where we found out and understood how, and yet we figured he would be back. He always comes back, and now, with nobody to stand against him, he's free to do whatever he wants. Henry isn't fighting him, Michael isn't fighting him, they both thought he would burn, but he's free, as free as he can be while being stuck inside a video game world. For now. Penultimately, in at number 2, The Man in Room 1280. While plenty of people brush these books off as just books, the story of The Man in Room 1280 is one of the most important pieces of lore we have gotten from this series. It answers a question that we've all had since FNAF 3. How does William keep surviving? How does he always come back? And while it may seem minuscule, this is the biggest hint that we've gotten in ages. Learning that William was possessed by the spirit of one of his victims explains more in the series than any Easter egg Scott had left us. I don't care that Funtime Foxy can mimic voices, or how the Scooper can inject a remnant. It mattered how William's signature line of "I always come back" is true, and this book delivered. It also explains how he came to possess a hard drive that got scanned into Help Wanted. It explains that since he was possessed, he was alive in FNAF 3, and that explains how he survived the fire in both FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. It showed us that everyone knows what he did despite not being convicted. It provided so much for us, and that makes it the most important piece of confirmed lore that we have. There is one moment that is more important, but we have nothing on it at the time of this recording. And that point is, finally, in at number 1, the breaking point. The breaking point in this scenario is referring to the moment William started killing. We don't know when it was, we don't know why it was. To us, it's just always been a thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was an incident before that of the missing children's from the first game that was just his first kill. We don't know what drove him into killing, and there's no way that would have been the first, right? Nothing has been confirmed or even presented in the games. There are hypotheses that it was due to his wife or lover dying, perhaps due to childbirth, or that it was because one of his children died, but we know that can't be true unless he had another kid that we haven't seen, because he had designed animatronics to kill before his children died. There were really no indicators as to why he started on his mass killing spree. It could just be that he's insane and wanted to do it, or maybe he wanted to unlock the mysteries of life, or maybe it was just an accident the first time but then he got a taste for it. We don't know, and we don't even have any evidence to go off, so all of this is just hypothesis and guesswork. It can't even really be educated guesswork because we don't know enough about Afton himself to make a real connection. Like, we don't understand him as a person, if you kind of get what I'm saying. We know parts of his story, but we don't know what's in his brain, and that's what we would need to make an educated guess, at least from the crime shows I've watched.
In 10, the 2-eye theory. The 2-eye theory states that in FNAF 3's bad ending, there are 2 eyes lit up in the head and the back, which we assume to be Golden Freddy, to show that there are 2 souls inside the animatronic. This isn't the case, okay, and I'm just gonna tell you why. Firstly, it would be more difficult to tell that it was an animatronic head in the back if there was only 1 eye lit up, since all we see of this head are the eyes. And the second eye being lit up could very well just be a reflection from the first light, since it's so dark. Notice how Freddy also has light coming out of his other eye, but he doesn't have a second soul. Secondly, Crying Child wasn't introduced into the series yet, not coming until the next game that wasn't even going to happen until the community was disappointed in the Springtrap jump scare. Since this was supposed to be the end of the series, that's why we released the Souls in the Happiest Day minigame. Also notice that only 1 person wears a Golden Freddy mask in that minigame, and according to the official Freddy Files Updated Edition book, quote, you'll see an image of broken animatronics heads, each with a lit eye, meaning that Golden Freddy in the back only has 1 eye lit. And considering how this is the official guidebook to the series, we kinda need to take it as law. And at 9, the Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 is one of the most mysterious moments in the entire FNAF series, and it was introduced in the first game, so we've been dealing with this thing for like nearly 10 years. Being introduced into the series in FNAF 1 from 2014, the Bite of 87 has remained one of the most debated points in FNAF history, and we can't quite agree on what happened. At first, we thought it was Golden Freddy who caused the bite, then Normal Freddy, then Mangle, then Fred Bear, then Toy Chica, then back to Mangle, and everyone has their different opinion on the subject, but for some reason, people also think that it's confirmed that the Bite of 83 from FNAF 4 is the Bite of 87. which it isn't. And if you look up Bite of 87 on Google, you get pictures of the bite from FNAF 4, which is in 1983, which is, as I'm sure you can tell, confusing for our editors. I'm sure that you're seeing pictures of the incident now, honestly. Like, the Bite of 87 and 83 have been confused for ages, and they're still being confused to this day. Mostly because of Markiplier asking if that was the Bite of 87. Honestly, it's kind of frightening based on how many people get mad at me because I go against something matpat said, but then also tell me that I'm wrong, that it's the Bite of 83, not 87, even though I agree with matpat on that point. And at 8, Sparky the dog. In the early days of the first game's lifespan, someone began to spread rumors online about a hidden 6th animatronic named Sparky the dog. Sure enough, screenshots began to crop up on Tumblr of this secret animatronic. Of course it was Tumblr. Reportedly, Sparky the one-armed dog was a non-violent animatronic and would never attack the player, only appearing occasionally in the backstage doorway, hence why we never saw them. However, it was eventually revealed as a hoax by the creators, Tumblr users Kodai Bear and Win, with all the screenshots being photoshopped. I mean, I feel like that would have been pretty obvious, but I don't know. Did you ever think that Sparky was real? Like, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like, at this point, my knowledge of FNAF was limited to exactly what matpat said because I was terrified of anything horror related. Yeah, like even the Eddie Brock becoming Venom scene in Spider-Man 3 was terrifying. But yeah, I mean, I played it. I played FNAF 1 on like the bus home from school, but I did it muted, so I didn't have to deal with the jump scares. Okay? There was a girl sitting next to me. I felt pretty badass. And it's 7, fan games. There have been multiple instances of people in the comments using points or story elements from FNAF fan games to try to prove my theories wrong. For example, a while ago, a YouTube user commented saying that Vanny's mask appears in a fan game called Aftermath. So my statement of her mask appearing in a DLC to a game that's meant to look back on past tragedies of the franchise, and that could mean that she's from the past, would have been false, even though Aftermath is a fan game that has no canonicity in the main series, which I don't understand because, like, why would you try and use a fan game to prove me wrong? Like, on a video that has nothing to do with that theory, no less. Like, he didn't even comment it on that video. He commented it on another video. Someone else even commented on yet another video where I included fan characters for context, since the main series didn't have 10, where they said fan games don't count since they're non-canon and are in a different universe. Which was trying to be a dig at me for using fan characters, but since there aren't 10 Springlock victims in the actual FNAF series, in the books or the games combined, I kinda had to. But this only supports my point. If I can't use fan games in a list, which I can because it's my list, you can't use fan games as evidence for a theory, and I don't do that either. And at 6, Cassidy. In my personal opinion, I think the idea that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed is wrong, okay? Here come the comments, I know what's gonna happen. In my head, okay, there is way more evidence for Crying Child being the one you should not have killed. If you're interested in the reasoning for that, to actually see if I may have a point instead of just getting mad right away, please go check out that video, it's linked up in the iCard, either now or later. However, the main reason I believe it's Crying Child, aside from the rest of the evidence, is because William would have been the only one around for Crying Child to possess when he dies in the hospital. Cassidy was around the Golden Freddy animatronic, but unless William brought his work with him to the hospital, which is highly unlikely given the fact that his child's head was crushed in 1983, possibly before Golden Freddy was even created. So reasonably, if Crying Child was going to possess someone, it would end up being William. He would then come to see the horrible acts his father would commit 2 years later, and then intend on keeping him alive so that he could suffer for them. Since in the end, it was William's fault that Crying Child died since he had superpowered Fredbear's jaw. Again, which is the only thing that makes sense. It's a mistake not to consider that a possibility, but I can already hear the comments now. Halfway through, in at number 5, Dead Afton. Okay, here we go again. There's gonna be so many mad comments on this video. William Afton didn't die in the spring locking incident that we see in FNAF 3's 8-bit minigames, okay? He didn't. I know there are still plenty of people who think that he did die, but he didn't. matpat even said it himself, since the majority of people who are saying this are also the ones who say I'm wrong because matpat said whatever, okay? He said in one of his FNAF 3 or 4 timeline theories or something that To note that you don't see William die in the suit, okay? You see him convulsing because of the spring locking and then twitching, but he never stops moving. And thanks to the man in room 1280, we know that William was being kept alive by the spirit of one of his victims that the book calls Andrew, but the game's called The One You Should Not Have Killed. And we know that these are meant to help fill in blanks from the past, thanks to a Reddit post from Scott from 2020 saying, "Let me at least say this, future games will look forward, but the novels will fill in some blanks from the past." So this book single-handedly gives us a reason as to how William survived all those years other than Remnant, okay? The One You Should Not Have Killed was possessing him, and might still be. We don't know. And at 4, Princess Quest. According to one very adamant viewer during my recent 24-hour live stream, okay, there's a theory going around that matpat also talked about, now that everyone seems to believe, because again, matpat talked about it, that the princess in Princess Quest is actually meant to be Cassidy. And while I don't agree with this theory, it's still a theory nonetheless, so I'll talk about it. I'll give it its little moment here. This theory generates from some apparent files within one of the games, guessing that it would have been security breach since there are 3 Princess Quest games in that one compared to the FNAF VR mobile version where there's only 1. But apparently, according to this viewer, those files indicate that the actual name of the character is Cassidy. I don't know how they really indicate that, and I mean, like, I don't know how anyone found that. They wouldn't really elaborate. They just kept spamming that it was Cassidy, despite me saying that I don't care about that, because that's clearly not the case in my opinion, because like if you think about it, in the first Princess Quest game, that's when you get trapped by Glitch Trap, right? That's when you get possessed by Glitch Trap, and then you spend the next 2 games trying to break free. Like, the only reason I'd believe that it's Cassidy is for purely symbolic reasons, since Cassidy is trying to torture William, at least if they are the one you should not have killed, which again, I don't believe, which would end up giving her motive to free Vanessa from William's control. But that's the only reasoning that I'd be able to, like, think for this theory, which makes it seem more like a hypothesis to me. And again, we get captured by Glitch Trap in the first game, which clearly indicates that it's actually Vanessa. And honestly, this could be what Vanessa's doing in her head. Okay? Like, this is when Vanny's taking over and Vanessa's not in control, this could be what Vanessa's doing, trying to fight back, okay? Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Mrs. Afton death. The story of Mrs. Afton, if there even is one, is a mystery that we've been debating for ages. A story that hasn't even had a slight amount of explanation, okay? No references, no mention of an actual name, nothing. So naturally, there are theories about it. However, these theories have no actual base in-game lore and instead focus on FNAF animated music videos for the most part, and stories that are treated as canon and sometimes scarily heavily so. The truth is, okay, we have no idea what happened to Mrs. Afton currently. We don't know if there even was a Mrs. Afton, or if it was just a baby mama, or if William had like a surrogate so that he could have his own children and just paid some woman to have his kid. Hell, okay, these kids may just be adopted for all we know. Either way, for some reason, and I don't know what video really caused this to pick up, a load of people think that Mrs. Afton died in a car accident and then is now possessing Ballora. I mean, it's a possibility, certainly, but that doesn't mean that it's canon. This is still a problem to this day, with many people just a couple of days ago trying to tell me what happened, mostly treating their statements as fact. A couple examples, if I may. Quote, William killed Mrs. Afton, he stuffed her body into Ballora. Or, William Afton killed Mrs. Afton and Mrs. Afton now is Ballora in sister location. And Mrs. Afton is Ballora now though. That last one was meant to be a fact. Like, there is no interpreting it otherwise. They intended that on being like a correction. All of these are equally possible, okay, but nothing is actually canon. And as far as we know for certain, Baby is the only possessed sister location animatronic. And I think that the fact that there's so much fighting against what actually happened to Mrs. Afton indicates that none of this is true. The other animatronics may have like the remnant in them from the original Missing Children robots, but that's it. A Ballora themed staff robot being present at a table in Security Breach only means that Ballora was meant to represent the mother, not that she possesses the animatronic. Are we saying that like William is possessing the staff bot and so is Crying Child? And yeah, no, we're not. So like, she's not possessing Ballora. That's not a thing. Ballora isn't possessed. Penultimately, into number 2, character names. The names of various characters over the years have remained mysterious. Sometimes they don't have a name, other times an alias like the purple guy, or other times they just get random names decided by the community. However, in all of these instances they don't end up actually being canon. And something I've noticed a lot in the comments is the misuse of names that either have no origin or very weak origins and people believing them to be canon. One of the best examples right now is Crying Child and Mrs. Afton. Crying Child currently has two names that are really being used, Evan and Chris, although now there might even be Gregory, which is a whole other can of worms. But none of those names are canon, okay? And only one of them is an actual theory, and not even a strong theory at that. So far, they've only been able to find E, V, and A, and not the N in any solid fashion. And the whole Clara Afton thing is just very outlandish to me. Just because there's a name doesn't mean it belongs to someone, okay? Does that mean that like Crying Child's name is Vlad because the purple character was named Vlad, or is that William's new name? Like, no, guys, come on. Look, if you're going to apply those rules to Clara, you have to find someone who's named Vlad. Alright, that's the rules. And finally, in at number 1, origins. Going along with the whole we don't know anything about Mrs. Afton thing, or names are being misused, we don't really know why Afton decided to start killing people. And more particularly, kids specifically. He could just be your good old run-of-the-mill psychopath, but some people assume that it's because his kids died. However, that is literally impossible, since his kids died as a direct result of him wanting to kill other kids. Elizabeth dies thanks to getting scooped by Baby that was specifically designed for that purpose. And Crying Child died after Elizabeth and as a result of an animatronic with too much bark in that bite. Since like I've been saying in other videos for ages, there were no spring locks that could have failed in the mouth since it was already in suit mode, so all the spring locks had been released. Also there'd be no spring locks in the mouth because it's an open mouth. So his children died as a direct result of him wanting to kill kids. It could have been that when his wife or baby mama or whatever Mrs. Afton was left him, that's what caused him to trigger, but we can't know that for sure. The truth is we really have nothing to go off of as to reasons why William started killing, because it wasn't because of possession or his kids, because he doesn't learn about those until after he starts wanting to kill people, okay? Maybe a Fazbear Frights book will let us know when like the 12th one comes out with all the discarded ones. I don't know.
Number 10, the final call. In the first FNAF game, our final call sounds like a demon picked up the phone to call you. Gone, of course, is the reassuring voice of Phone Guy, as he has his own problems to deal with after Night 4. However, that makes us wonder who exactly is calling you here, and what is it that they are trying to say. Some fans have theories on this, but no one seems to be able to fully agree on just what could be being said here, if anything. The only thing I think we can all agree on is how creepy this phone call is. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show it by giving this video a thumbs up. And be sure to check out our FNAF playlist for even more FNAF videos. Number 9, the vent story. In Sister Location, we learn of the fate of someone else who crawled through the vents previous to us. And surprise, surprise, it's not good. It's not a good fate. The thing that I think makes this moment so dark is the levity that it's given in its retelling. As we crawl through the vents, it's an angsty teenage voiced hand unit that offers to tell us a funny story. The story goes that a dead body was once found in the vent that we are in. Hand unit admits the story isn't that funny, but falls back on the fact that, hey, it was a story. As you are in the vent, the fact that there is no sympathy for the dead body or any explanation of how or when it was found just kinda adds to the darkness and the horror of this moment. Number 8, say hi to Ballora. These mini Renas though, they really just get me. Why are they so creepy looking? How is this a thing when Ballora is made to look so pretty and so nice, and yet her mini Renas literally appear as though they were just designed to be straight nightmare fuel. In Sister Location, part of our job is making sure that the animatronic performers are on their stages, practicing and ready to perform whenever they are called upon next. If they are not on the stage, we are meant to give them a controlled shock to encourage them to come out so that we can see them. For Ballora, there is one night where we do not do this, as she appears on her stage willingly. Well, Not really willingly, more in pieces, which are paraded in front of us by her mini-renas, who hold up her disassembled body. The whole moment is dark and disturbing and makes us wonder what happened to her and if the mini-renas tore her apart. Of course, there is something much bigger going on when it comes to Bellora's state in regards to the greater story in this game, but we don't know about all of that just yet, so instead, we just get creeped out. Number 7. Springtrap's fate. Or really, William's fate, I guess? In Five Nights at Freddy's 3, there is a little cutscene via the minigames that we unlock where we learn of why Springtrap looks so gnarly. You end up finding him surrounded by ghosts and see as he attempts to disguise himself in the spring lock suit, only to have those locks malfunction and have him get impaled by all the screws and parts within that suit as it all suddenly releases. These little mini games and cutscenes always have the best bits of lore, but generally also give us the most disturbing scenarios and creepy stories, all in 8-bit. What's more, I love that although Springtrap is the villain here, the ghosts actually feel really malevolent. And I know they're just like innocent little ghosts, but I'm also like, you guys kind of seem sinister here. I like it. Number 6. Step Closer. I love the Fazbear Frights books. They just add a whole lot of creepy moments to the franchise and even provide us with some of the darkest stories overall. Step Closer is the title story of the 4th Fazbear Frights book, which shares its name. In this story, we learn how Pete, the older brother of Chuck, ends up being cursed by Foxy after visiting Freddy's and attempting to tease his younger brother. Foxy's song that he sings stays with Pete, and it's believed that the curse that Foxy placed upon him through that song is causing his eye and his arm to constantly be thrust into dangerous situations. Pete figures out how to cure himself of the curse and decides to make things right, but is killed before this can happen. In the end, despite being dead, Pete is somehow seemingly still awake and within his body, and is able to witness as his hand and eye are removed, as they are needed for another patient, and Pete is listed as an organ donor. Number 5. Phone Guy's Farewell. The final phone call that you do manage to get from Phone Guy in FNAF 1 comes through on night 4. This phone call is pretty dark, as with it we are able to piece together what may have happened to our helpful friend who has been guiding us through our first week with pre-recorded messages from what we assume must have been his final week on the job. This phone call, however, seems to imply that Phone Guy never got to finish out this week, as on night 4 he was attacked by the animatronics after likely running out of power. All we can hear is his voice somewhat frantic but attempting to hold it together as he asks us to check the suits maybe in the back room for him, as he plans on hiding out there before he is interrupted by Freddy's music and what sounds like an animatronic jump scare. Number 4. Room for One More. Still one of the most horrifying and haunting stories that we have received so far from the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise comes, for me, once again, from the Fazbear Frights books. The 1:35 a.m. story Room for One More is such a disturbing story that I cannot ever forget it. It really just stays with me. It recounts the tale of Stanley, a security guard who works at an underground facility, likely Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, and can't help falling asleep on the job because, well, he works nights. Mini-Renas always come to visit him to ask if he will take them home with him, and he agrees to do so, but whenever he wakes up, they're seemingly gone. Oh well. We learn that what has really been happening is that they have been crawling into his body while he was asleep, making Stanley feel more and more unwell as the story goes on. But he doesn't realize why until the very end, when he actually witnesses one mini-Rena crawling inside him as he screams after she asks him if he has room for one more. Number 3. Hangman. The fate of the workers in the lore and stories is really what gets me while in the game, because you yourself as the protagonist are meant to be a worker at this place. In Sister Location, not only do we have the strangely brief and nondescriptive story of the dead body in the vent, but we also get a moment when on the last night no animatronics appear to be on their stage. Instead, Hand Unit believes they are there when we shine the light on the stages because of the presence of something much darker and awful there. That is 2 dead bodies which appear to be hanging from the rooftop of both of the stage areas. These bodies are likely the workers who you have been told stayed well past their shift end and have not yet left. Turns out they couldn't leave because they were too busy being dead. They're just hanging around. Number 2. Death of Crying Child. I think this was also one of the most shocking moments for me in this game, especially in FNAF 3, and especially given what happens before even this moment. Crying Child is afraid of the animatronics at Freddy's, but despite this, his brother, Foxy Bro, possibly Michael Afton, and his brother's friends take him to see the animatronics up close. Great. They are doing this obviously because they enjoy tormenting this poor kid who just wants to stay at a safe distance away, and maybe doesn't even want to be there. That whole part is a little confusing to me based on the toys that the Crying Child owns. It seems as though they actually might be a Freddy's fan, but maybe it's just the animatronics and not the character's overall brand that they have a problem with. They get up close and push Crying Child towards the animatronics, forcing him to give the animatronic a big kiss. However, Crying Child's head then becomes stuck inside the mouth of said animatronic and then is shown being crushed after it malfunctions. Despite the 8-bit graphics, this moment is shocking and haunting. Like I said, these 8-bit graphic scenes are just a lot. Number 1. Death of Elizabeth. A lot of the darkest moments in my mind come from one of my favorite games in the franchise, Sister Location. I mean, maybe that's part of the reason that I love it so much. I do like dark things. The death of Elizabeth is definitely one of the darkest moments out there. I especially love the eerie monologue we get from Circus Baby surrounding it, explaining how she lured Elizabeth away from the group using ice cream and was seemingly unaware of what was going on or why exactly it happened, as though it were part of Circus Baby's programming to kill Elizabeth, devouring her and trapping her soul within the animatronic. Time for an honorable mention. Honorable mention. Another dark moment that I love actually comes from the first game and isn't so much an event that happens within the story as just a recurring game mechanic moment, if you will. Just Foxy in general in that game just creeps me out in the best possible way, whether it be him peeking out from behind the curtain, or sprinting towards you, or just hearing him banging on the door. Foxy has a lot of dark and terrifying moments that always startle me and threaten to linger behind in my thoughts, especially whenever I find myself staring at a closed curtain somewhere.